Bitcoin. Bitcoin had a gigantic breakout in yesterday's video. Right around here, we actually caught a large part of the breakout from yesterday on a live stream. We were live streaming and we caught a large portion of that Bitcoin running up to 12,000. And then overnight, while I was out and then asleep, Bitcoin managed to rally all the way to $13,000, guys. I logged onto my computer this morning, checked my investing portfolio, and good Lord in heaven, that was a very large gain I made yesterday. I'm very happy with what Bitcoin is doing, but I also want to go ahead and warn you guys about something that may be happening to Bitcoin relatively soon. And this isn't some kind of doom and gloom FUD scenario. This is based off of every single time that Bitcoin goes parabolic, something bad normally ends up happening. So we're going to be discussing this breakout. We're going to be discussing how Bitcoin rallied here, where we might continue to, whether or not we're going to $20,000. And I'm also going to give you guys a very, very big caveat to all of that that talks about the potential of a major pullback here on Bitcoin. We're going to be discussing all of that and more in today's video, guys. I think you're really going to enjoy what we have on the roster for today's video. So if you do enjoy today's video, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe bell and the notification button, guys. And without much further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. In yesterday's video, we discussed how Bitcoin broke out of this symmetrical triangle pattern here, and it was moving to the upside. And then later on in that day, I realized that Bitcoin was moving into yet another triangle pattern right in here. So I started live streaming somewhere right around here, waiting for this breakout to happen, because I had a feeling it would happen within a couple of hours of me live streaming. We ended up live streaming for 2.5 hours, and about an hour before we wrapped up, Bitcoin did actually have the breakout, and it rallied all the way to $12,000. We caught all of it on live stream. If you want, the VOD is still on YouTube. You can go check that out. It went up yesterday. We had so many viewers. At peak, we had around 400 viewers. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and donated to the stream. I do very much appreciate it. But after we wrapped up the stream and I went out to do some things for that night that I had to take care of, Bitcoin fell back down here and got support at that level of support and resistance we were discussing of around $11,700. Remember me talking about that in yesterday's video. We fell back down to it and got support at it after initially getting resistance at it, and then we bounced off of it and moved to the upside. That's a very bullish signal whenever you break through some resistance and then use it as support. It's kind of a screw you to the bears, and it's like, okay, well, we can break your resistance, but we're not going to let you break that resistance as support. We're going to use it as support rather than using it as a resistance. This is normally a very bullish indicator, and it's normally kind of afterburner. It's normally kind of putting nitrous into the engine that keeps the rally going. And from there, Bitcoin continued rallying all the way up to nearly $13,000 last night around 2 a.m., around 1:30 a.m. actually, Eastern time. Traded sideways, and now we're moving up again. As the East Coast of America wakes up and as the rest of the United States wakes up, they're going to see what happened last night. And there's probably going to be even more FOMO today, guys. To be totally honest, I think we're looking at a bullish day, at least for the first part. And I'll get to why I say at least for the first part later on, because we're also going to be looking at some very major bearishness coming up in the near-term future, I do think. Like I said, we're going to dive into all of that and more in today's video. Let's go ahead and look at our technical indicators and see what they are all saying about this matter. Bitcoin is looking ridiculously bullish, guys. For one, if we come out to the daily chart, we will see that Bitcoin has now been bullish on the daily chart and had green candlesticks for 8 days in a row. 1 green, 2 green, 3 green, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th day green. This one, of course, hasn't closed yet, but it would take a major crash for this to end up closing red, and if it did, that would be a shooting star. Wouldn't be great for Bitcoin. It would look pretty bad out here on the chart. Nevertheless, Bitcoin has been trading green for 8 days in a row. We haven't seen that happen in a very long time. I don't know exactly when the last time we saw 8 green days in a row was, but I'll be honest, it was probably during the last bull market. I don't think we've seen that. I don't see any of it right here. No, I don't see a single time where we saw 8 green in a row. We may have seen 8 green in a row right here on some other charts, but you have to go back years to find that kind of long-term bullishness. I don't really see anyone talking about that, but that is important. The first example of 8 green in a row that I found here would be back in April of 2017, over 2 years ago. So that is a very strong sign that we're probably going to see some kind of pullback or some kind of correction, at least some consolidation here over the next couple of days. Something, even if Bitcoin only dives $100 and has a red candlestick tomorrow, we're probably going to see something. The main point of this video is not actually to do technical analysis on this breakout, even though we are going to be doing a lot of that. The main point of this video is to remind you guys that Bitcoin, when it goes up, it must come down. And when it goes down, it must go up as well. I make these kind of contrarian videos a lot when Bitcoin was crashing during the bear market. I'd say, guys, Bitcoin's crashing. Just get yourself some more Bitcoin and get ready for what happened right in front of you. Bitcoin's going to rally again. But when Bitcoin rallies like this, there is going to be a correction. So let's go ahead and look at our technical indicators and see what they say. Well, guys, the first technical indicator I would like to look at here would be the MACD out on the daily chart. MACD is looking ridiculously bullish. We haven't seen MACD be this far away from the histogram ever since the run up to $20,000. And to be totally honest, this run that we're seeing right now is starting to look very analogous to that run up to $20,000, which is concerning to me. But nevertheless, we do see that Bitcoin is very, very bullish in the short term anyway. We see the histogram continues to show that we're seeing bullish divergence. We're seeing these two lines get further apart, which means the cross is further off in the future, and that also is a very bullish sign for Bitcoin. With all that said, the further away MACD gets from the histogram, the easier it is for this MACD to start converging bearish and then start using that momentum to have a bearish cross later in the future. The more bullish you get on the MACD, the easier it is for it to have a bearish convergence and bearish crosses. Let's say you have a rubber band and you pull it out and you pull it out and you pull it out and you pull it out. The more you pull it out, the harder it is to pull it even farther, because more of that elastic energy is being used to kind of pull your hands back together. The MACD is kind of similar. It has this elastic property where it'll want to get pulled back to the zero level on the histogram. So the further away you get from it, normally the easier it is for it to have a reversal. Moving right along here, guys, the next thing I want to look at would have to do with the daily chart RSI. Let's go ahead and make that the top dog down here on the bottom. The RSI is looking very, very overextended here on the daily chart, and so too on the weekly chart, and of course on the shorter term time frames. We can see that the RSI is very much getting into overbought territory on every single major long-term time frame on the weekly chart, and it's starting to creep up on the monthly chart as well into overbought territories. You typically see that RSI is going to stay in those regions for a little while, and it's going to have some kind of pullback. RSI is a lot different than stochastic RSI, even though they're used in a very similar manner. Stochastic RSI can stay in overbought territory for a very long time. A good example of that would be the stochastic RSI staying in overbought territory for pretty much the entire year so far. But RSI is typically a little bit more of a lagging indicator, a little bit harder to move into overbought territory. It doesn't oscillate as quickly as the stochastic RSI, and it's much easier for it to have some kind of a crash. And with that in mind, if we look back in history here, every time a regular RSI goes up into overbought territory, normally a crash is going to soon follow. That doesn't necessarily mean that one's going to happen here. Previous price action doesn't necessarily predict current price action, but that is the trend, is that RSI overbought signals will be respected a little bit more than stochastic RSI signals, at least in my experience, and at least from what we can see here on the chart. This is something that we're going to want to keep in mind, because RSI is starting to get very overextended. Every time it's gotten overextended, it does normally result, or at least correlate, with some kind of crash. We saw an overextension right here, and Bitcoin consolidated sideways. People forget that. You can trade sideways, and if you trade perfectly sideways with the exact same amount of gains as losses, stochastic RSI will equalize back down to the 50 level. So you can have a crash on the RSI. I think I said stochastic RSI a second ago. You can have a crash on the RSI from Bitcoin consolidating and trading sideways. Then we saw it rally again here. Bitcoin traded sideways and consolidated. Now we're rallying again here. This kind of stair-step pattern might indicate that Bitcoin should be in for a week or two, maybe 3-4 weeks of sideways trading. We'll see what happens with that. I don't really want to make a prediction on that just yet. But guys, the main thing I want you to take away from this video is this. Bitcoin is going parabolic. Bitcoin is mooning. Bitcoin is rallying. Bitcoin is breaking out. Whatever kind of buzzword you want to use to describe what Bitcoin is doing, go right ahead and do that. Here's the problem, because there is a very big problem, and I don't see enough people talking about this, because what I'm about to say is an unpopular position. But guess what? It's the truth, and you guys need to hear it. It's important that you hear this, even if it damages my credibility, because you need to be able to be confident in your trades, and you need to be safe in your trades. I made a crap ton of money just sleeping last night because of my investing portfolio, but you can also lose a crap ton of money sleeping in your investing and your trading portfolio if you're not careful, if you don't keep what I'm about to say in mind. This is very important. Guys, let's take a look at this rally that we've been in. This isn't even so much of a rally. This is a bull market bull rally. We saw that Bitcoin rallied from all the way down here around $3,200 all the way to nearly $13,000 in the span of about 3, 4, 5 months. Nearly a 300% rally. We've seen tens of billions of dollars flow back into the market. Bitcoin passed $200 billion in market cap the day before yesterday. Bitcoin is rallying very, very quickly. And a lot of people think that just because Bitcoin is rallying quickly, and just because when Bitcoin rallies in the last couple of months, it trades sideways rather than having a crash, or it trades sideways and doesn't have a crash, just because of what that's done, people think that Bitcoin isn't in for a crash. Well, let me tell you something. A lot of you guys weren't here during the 2017 bull run, and I remember vividly the very first video that ever went up on this channel was me sitting right back here calling this pullback, because if Bitcoin did not have a big enough pullback right here, it was sure as heck going to make up for it in the future. We saw that there was not the same kind of pullback that we needed during this pullback. This pullback was not big enough to warrant the major run that we had just gone on like this one was. This was a healthy pullback over here. We had not seen a big enough pullback, and I told you guys in the very first video that ever went up on this channel titled "Is Bitcoin Overextended?" that Bitcoin was going to be feeling this in the future if we didn't have more of a pullback than this. And lo and behold, I was right. Bitcoin would run all the way to $20,000 before it eventually started a bear market. This little sign right here was actually the first warning sign of an impending bear market. Bitcoin mooned, and everybody got so excited for Bitcoin going to the moon and Bitcoin going to $20,000 that nobody started taking profits, and everybody was buying. I mean, Bitcoin was everywhere. If you remember back here, Bitcoin was a meme on Dude Perfect. Ellen was talking about Bitcoin. It was all over the financial news media. It was everywhere. Bitcoin was huge. It was popular. I mean, everybody was talking about it. It was nuts. And rightfully so, by the way. Bitcoin was rallying very quickly. But nobody in there, not a whole lot of people anyway, especially not a lot of people that were less experienced in the market, were thinking, this is probably going to end sometime. This isn't going to last forever. Bitcoin is going to have a bear market. But guess what? It did happen. And a lot of people just simply weren't prepared for it because they didn't think it would ever happen. They thought, oh, this is just... They didn't have the thought that this is too good to be true. Because when you see something rally as much as Bitcoin did in 2017, it is too good to be true, at least for as long as the position that it'll last forever. It's not going to last forever. There is going to be a pullback. And the same is true in this rally here, guys. We might rally all the way up to $20,000 before we have a pullback. At this point, because of how sporadic and how crazy Bitcoin is acting, it's hard to predict exactly where this is going to go before it has a pullback. But every dollar that it marches higher, I get more and more skeptical of it. That doesn't mean that I'm going to stop my investing in it. I'm still dollar cost averaging all the way through. I don't care what the price is, because these dollar cost average investments that I'm doing are for the very long term. I don't care too much about what price they get in on, so long as it's below $20,000 or so. But there is going to be a pullback, and I don't want you guys going and buying this off of FOMO and getting yourself screwed because you bought into a market that was running off of FOMO. And here's the thing. The reason I said earlier that's an unpopular position for me is because if Bitcoin does rally to $14,000 or $15,000 tomorrow, everybody's going to point the finger at me and say, Jeb, you told us to be careful of the market, but look at what it just did. It just ran to $15,000. Yeah. It might run to $17,000. It might run to $20,000. But right now, we're getting into territory where we need to be careful, because that pullback could be around the corner, or it could come in 2 months from now. All I'm saying is that you need to be careful, you need to use stop losses, and you need to make sure that you are watching your investing portfolio like a hawk, and that you're ready to sell it at a moment's notice if that's what your plan is for your investing portfolio. Now guys, I am not saying that the bull market is going to end. I am not saying that Bitcoin is going to die. I am not saying that Bitcoin is going to have a gigantic crash down to like $3,000. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that Bitcoin is overextended, and we should be seeing more of a pullback than we've seen so far. We only saw this pullback right here. We only saw this one. That's not enough, guys. At least in the short term anyway, Bitcoin is going to consolidate up here. That's just a fact. Bitcoin might run to $15,000 before it consolidates, because if we were to check our VPVR, there's not a lot of resistance up here. The path to $20,000 is pretty clear, so it might even be $20,000 before we have a pullback. But there is going to be one, so keep an eye out for it, because you need to be careful. Guys, I can't stress this enough. There is so much money to be made in Bitcoin, but a lot of you guys, especially that have just gotten into the market or left during the bear market and just came back, I don't think you realize just how much money there is to be lost as well. That we had Arrow Assassin 09, for example. He's become a kind of a meme on the channel because he mentioned to me in one of the premieres, "Oh, Jeb, I'm so glad you called that breakout. I put my entire life savings into Bitcoin and then I made a bunch of money." And I told him, "You're dumb. Don't do that. Don't put your whole life savings into Bitcoin, even if you're almost certain that Bitcoin is going to rally, because Bitcoin can crash. You never know." I don't think it's going to. I think Bitcoin's a great technology, but you have to be careful. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and climb down from my soapbox. I think you guys get the point I'm trying to make. I want you to be careful in this market. I don't want you guys to go and FOMO in, because I still think that we're at the beginning of a bull market, but it is also possible that Bitcoin went and made all of its gains a little bit too early in the bull market, and that the bears are going to get a little too happy here in a couple of months, maybe even a couple of weeks, when Bitcoin has just blown through the ceiling. All the bulls are going to get exhausted and not be able to defend themselves against the bears, and we see a major bear crash. We're talking worst case scenario here that could pull us down to like $6,000 or something. There is a CME a gap down there that needs to be filled. Probably won't be, but time will tell. Guys, no matter what happens, I think there's still a very bright future for Bitcoin. I think any dollars that you put into Bitcoin now in 10 years will be worth a lot more than what they are now. I think it's a great investment opportunity for the long term, but I do want you guys to be cognizant of the possibility and the ever-increasing probability of a major pullback that could really wreck you guys if you're not careful. Always use stop losses and always be ready to move part of your portfolio to the exchange and sell it if and only if that is what your plan is. If you're planning on hodling until the end of time, don't do that. That is completely up to you. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much going to wrap it up for today's video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for tuning into the live stream yesterday, watching today's video, and supporting the channel. As always, if you want to continue to do that, you can smash that like button. It was mean to me the other day, and I want you guys to punish it like I said in the other video. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell.